Welcome to the Mid-Ohio Valley Public Forum video podcast. This podcast features issues of interest to the residents of the Mid-Ohio Valley area. Right now, with the coronavirus pandemic, civic life has changed greatly across our country.
This is an election year, and one of the changes is that candidates have not been able to campaign the way they normally would. Generally, they'd be out at fairs and festivals and other civic events, shaking hands and meeting and greeting the voters. They can't do that this year.
So, many of our initial podcasts will feature interviews with candidates running for local and state offices. If you're a candidate and you're interested in being interviewed, you can reach us through our Facebook page, that's MOV Public Forum, or via email at movpublicforum@gmail.com.
Today we'll be interviewing Roy Ramey. Roy is a candidate for the Agricultural Commissioner of West Virginia. It's a crucial job. Right back up with it's a crucial job. Okay. It's a crucial job that actually requires candidates to have more qualification than for the office of governor. Also, here in West Virginia, we're one of only about a dozen states that elects our agricultural commissioner. Therefore, I think it behooves all of us voters to know a little bit about what the agricultural commissioner does and what the position entails. So welcome, Roy. We're glad you could join us this afternoon.
Thank you. I sure appreciate you having me on today. It's a great honor.
Great. Well, with that, let's dive right in. Give us your best 1-minute introduction pitch speech.
Hey, so my name's Roy Ramey, and I'm a small regenerative farmer in Cabell County, West Virginia. We raise poultry, pork, and eggs on pasture, and we sell to our local community. I was proud to have helped start our local farmers market, the Wild Ramp Market in Huntington. And additionally, besides that, I do educating and workshops for agriculture and related things. And also, I'm a 31-year veteran in the Army, currently serving in the Army Reserves. And I absolutely enjoy the privilege of being able to serve our country, and look forward to extending that service into service to the state of West Virginia through this office.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your service, Roy. We appreciate it. Candidates for the Commissioner of Agriculture are required to meet certain stringent requirements. In addition to the usual requirements for running for state office, according to the West Virginia State Code, quote, "The commissioner shall be a practical farmer, learned in the science of agriculture, and shall have made agriculture his chief business for a period of 10 years preceding his election." Given that all candidates must meet those requirements if they're running for Ag Commissioner, what sets you apart from the others who are running?
Hey, that's a very good question. So I actually had a background in doing some small family farming growing up as a child, up until the time I went to college. And I decided at that point I really didn't want anything to do with farming anymore and got away from it. It was hard work, didn't pay much money, and I saw the older folks not making anything of it. And I made a conscious decision later on after I got out of college that, hey, this was a good life and I really enjoyed it and I want to get back to it. So at a point, we bought our own farm. My wife and I decided that was what we wanted to do, and went to pursuing it. And I guess the big thing that's different with what I do is we use regenerative practices. Now that's coming on and starting to get more well known. A lot of folks are trying to do that, but it's about rebuilding the soil, keeping our water and air clean, and trying to make things better as opposed to being extractive on the land. So when we raise our animals, we're not just taking away and exporting it. By the way, soil is our #1 export in this country. We lose more of it every year, and I heard a figure that we've got about 50 years of soil left just this past weekend. So we're actually rebuilding that soil on our place and take measures that we're proud of to give back to the land while we're still producing food for our local community.
What is your main motivation that made you decide to step up and run for office now?
So for several years now, I've been studying up, learned a lot from Joel Salatin in some of these practices. But really what I've learned more than the methods of farming is the regulatory environment is unfair to small farmers. And that really set me in this mission that we need to curb the regulatory environment. I have actually worked a few years ago to try to pass a raw milk bill in the state of West Virginia. And I was part of the team that was successful at getting a herd share. That was kind of the small compromise. But in fact, we need a whole lot more freedom, if you will, against some of those onerous regulations. And the regulations are all there set not for our safety, as we're told on a regular basis, but in fact, it's to exclude small farmers as competition for the industrial farm model. And we don't practice according to the industrial model on our farm. And we actually don't have very many industrial farms in West Virginia. So why don't we do something that's more conducive to the small farms? And that really got me going on this to help cut those regulations and make it more of a equal operating environment that's fair for small farmers and not set apart for the large industrial farms.
Well, Roy, in West Virginia, as I'm sure you know, 98% or so of the farms are classified as small farms, and 98% of those are family-owned operations. Now, I lived out in the Central Valley in California, and it's 180 degrees different. You have the huge mega farms and feedlots that run to thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres. So that's completely opposite, that industrial model, to what we have here in West Virginia. So if elected, what's your plan to help small family farms thrive?
Well, obviously, I'm part of that 98% of the small farms, and I've already addressed, that's in part why I'm running, a huge part. So I have a huge piece that will help small family farms. And it starts with cutting the regulations and making things that are more fair for small farms as well as large farms. There's no reason why we should have that disparity that specifically protects the mega farms. So cutting the regulations is a huge piece. Another part is having them involved. And I've been around this whole state and talk to small farmers all over to find out what their issues are. So it's not just, hearsay according to Ramey. I'm actually getting input from other people and what are their issues. So along that lines, it'll be, let's get input from everybody and what are their burdens. And some people have different burdens than what I have on my farm and for my local community. So I'm definitely taking that into consideration. And then the other piece that's huge is education. And I have a background in training and education. I taught in collegiate level military leadership classes for 3 years. And I'm also a training officer and heavily involved in teaching. We've got 40,000 students a year in the Army. So I well know the education and training methodology. So with the demonstration farms that I'd like to establish on our state farms, we will teach those regenerative practices as I'm so much promoting, and we will teach people how to do pastured operations and permaculture orchards and small farming methodology. We shouldn't have to go to a 4-year college and spend $80,000 in debt to get a degree to learn industrial farming, only to come home and do regenerative farming that you didn't have any education for. so we can do some short workshops to help these young people learn. There's young people all over, by the way, that want to learn these methods, and they don't know where to turn. So I do a lot of consulting on helping them find those resources, and we can formalize that at the state level by teaching anything from, a couple-day workshop to a couple-week workshop. And when the folks walk away, they have real hands-on knowledge on how to raise cattle on pasture, or how to raise pastured broilers, or how to do sales and marketing on a small farm. And so those are real things that they can walk away with and will make a huge difference.
Well, like the population of West Virginia, which is in decline and has been for decades, the number of farms is declining as well. At the peak, back in the 1930s, we reached a high of 97,000 farms. Today, we're down to something around 20,000, and we're shedding farm operations on a weekly basis. Our farmers retire, and the next generation don't want to continue, like you said earlier, with the family farm operation for a host of reasons. Do you have thoughts on plans for turning this around? You know how you would do it?
Yeah, and you're right on target there with the farms in decline, and specifically during the last 3 years, which, by the way, is all during this current administration, we've lost more than 700 farms in West Virginia. And I plan on turning that around by, number one, cutting the onerous regulations. Number two, helping our local operations thrive. So in addition to the farms themselves, farmers need outlets to sell their products. We do have some farmers markets around. You have the traditional tailgate farmers market. What really works here in the Huntington area, which is our nearest large community, is a year-round indoor farmers market where it's operated by a core of folks that we can bring our products in. It's packaged, we drop it off, and it's like a consignment model. So they sell the product for us, and we don't even have to come back in until it's time to replenish that product. And I'm really proud of that model. And whether, that's right for our community, what's right for another community may be a slight variation of that, but I would like to take that and replicate it across the state in at least all of our major communities, and probably down to at least our medium communities at least, and facilitate more farmers markets around. That gives the farmers their outlet, directly to consumers. And additionally, they need support operations like slaughterhouses, processing centers, community kitchens where they can actually process their food for packaging. And so by establishing those in larger quantities than we have right now, that'll help those small farmers to transition their product from an animal. You can't eat a live animal, so how do we get it to the consumer? Well, we got to break it down in between there. So those slaughter operations will do that. And then through the education process on these demonstration farms that we're going to establish, just by teaching people those methods, there's young people all around that I run into that want to learn about farming. They just don't know where to start. And so if we have these workshops, then instead of losing 700 plus farms over 3 years, we're going to have folks that are starting way more than the 700 we've lost, simply by taking a small piece of land, and we can raise a lot. Now, you're not going to raise 1,000 head of cattle on 5 acres, but with even a couple acres in an urban setting, you can raise a lot of food in a small place, and folks can work together on those urban lots, for instance, or even on small rural lots. And it's all about the education and how can we make those small spaces work. Another thing that I want to do is establish repairs on a lot of our mine sites. Mines haven't been reclaimed through the mining process when they were done, and we can make use of a lot of that space by repairing the land through the reclamation process, and then transitioning those spaces to farmland, and offer that up to people who want the larger tracts of land. If you want 100 head of cattle, then here, we've got a spot for you we can make available. And that creates, it doesn't create more land. The land's already here. It restores it back to a condition that's usable. And we've also got a lot of land out there that people aren't using in a lot of the remote areas where we can raise hogs, for instance. That was a traditional method of raising hogs in the woodlands on silvopasture hillside. And we've got a lot of that. And it's just a matter of being creative enough and teaching people what they're able to do. Joel Salatin is one of my heroes and mentors, and he does exactly that. And we're just going to bring those methods to the people of West Virginia so they understand it. And those things together will not only reverse the trend of the declining farms, but they'll help expand way more farms than we've ever had before.
Mm-hmm. Well, Roy, you've talked about regenerative farming, and I'm not sure if that is just another word for sustainable farming, but I wanted to ask you about sustainable farming. Do you know if there is a difference between the two? Could you tell me what that is? Explain a little bit about what sustainable farming is, and then talk about anybody, is there anybody in the state that's already doing it? And do you have plans to increase the number of people doing sustainable farming?
Yes, that's a very good question. I'm glad he asked that. A lot of people are confused by that. We've heard sustainable for a long time. Matter of fact, I worked at Marshall University, and we had a sustainment program that we worked on, and that was before really the term regenerative even came out. And it was all about, sustainable was keeping things the same. We don't want it to go in decline. Some real smart folks decided instead of going in decline, we need to do good things and rebuild the land that we've already had in the past. And so that's the big differentiation between sustainable is just keeping what we've got, and regenerative, which is actually restoring the land and rebuilding it. And, it's not just for the purpose of the land. We want to do the right thing with our earth. We only have one of them. But the other part is if we restore it to former glory, let's say, it's a matter of we can actually produce more. We have more people being born all the time. Our population is growing. We actually need to produce more food, and we're not going to do it with a declining environment. We're going to do it with restoring the environment to better condition that it is. So there's what regenerative agriculture is. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do things that we're doing on our farm is we help spread the manure around using the animals themselves. So instead of hauling it off site for somebody else to process it and then put it in bags and bring it back as compost, we actually move our animals around on our pasture, for instance, and we let them spread their own manure across that site. And by actually harvesting the grasses, they're trimming that. It's actually good for the grasses in the root zone and keeps those in check. It keeps some of the undesirable weeds, for instance, growing. There's a lot of things that are not weeds that we traditionally think of as weeds that are actually a valuable plant. And we make use of all that here. And to your question about do I know people who are doing it? I know all kinds of people are doing it. The most famous farmer in the world, Joel Salatin, who's not in West Virginia, but he's not too far across the border in Virginia, is actually using those methods. And that's where I learned a lot of it from myself. And he is a very giving person. He's humble enough to teach all of that. And there's a lot of material out there. And there's a lot of folks that I know in West Virginia. And the more I get around, particularly on this campaign, I'm finding way more people around that are doing the exact same thing that we're doing or some variation of it that's improving our soils, that's trying to keep our water clean. And they believe in building the soil better than it is. It's about not using some of the harmful toxic chemicals that's used in commercial agriculture. We hear a lot of bad stuff about Roundup, and there's a whole lot of others out there. And we don't use any of that on our farm at all. So it's not that it can't be done or that we have to deal with the consequences. It's just a matter of learning how to farm without it. And, that saves us money. There's potentially thousands of dollars a year I don't have to spend on chemicals that we just don't need. We just have to change the way we farm. And we're going to teach those principles to other people as well. And, when I save that money, that is more profitable for me as a farmer. And then that helps me have a better life. It helps me expand my operation so that I can actually produce food for more people. It attracts more people to it. And in the bigger picture, I can actually reduce my prices when I'm more profitable and bring us a more economical food. And that makes me more competitive now with the industrial model. We're going to teach these practices in the workshops that I discussed. And also as a policy, the very day that I'm inaugurated in as the new commissioner, I will establish a policy that as a department, we will no longer use those toxic chemicals on all of the state property that's under the control of the Department of Agriculture. And by that example, we're going to show that you can farm profitably without those and demonstrate to other people that you can do this. So that's the methods that we're going to do to help promote more regenerative farming.
Well, another new thing that's coming into play, a trend, is urban farming. You mentioned that briefly, where people are using vacant land in urban areas and farming it. The U.S. Department of Agriculture just a couple of weeks ago announced that they will be giving away $3 million in grants for the development of urban agriculture. Our town of Parkersburg has many vacant lots that the city has. They're producing very little in income and actually cost the city money because they have to mow and maintain these lots in order to keep up the appearance of our neighborhoods. I'm sure that many other urban locations in West Virginia have the same issue. Do you have a plan for developing and encouraging urban agriculture?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was just up in Parkersburg a few days ago and all the surrounding towns through there. It's a beautiful area, and I met some fantastic people up there. And that very thing that you're talking about was part of our conversation with at least 4 of the people that live in town there. One of the couples that I met has 4 lots within a football field's distance of their home and could make use of those. He's got a nice permaculture designed backyard and growing a lot of food on his own property, and could produce even more food if he had access to those others. He voiced a huge concern that the local government, I guess, was more concerned with appearances and keeping it all groomed and pretty. And, well, that might sound nice, but that costs money to do that, as opposed to let's produce good quality food for our neighbors. And they're within a baseball's throw, maybe, of more neighbors who could be consuming that food. And it doesn't have to look bad. There's a lot of ways that we can do that looks nice. So my plan for that is to work with the various local communities and encourage their support of urban farmers. And then back to the education piece, how can we do this? And it's not about stinking up the neighborhood. There's a lot of places have the right to farm, which they use as a way to say a right to sneak up the neighborhood. Well, we don't have to do that. We don't smell around here. And if you spread your manure around in a reasonable, responsible way, then it's building your soil back and it's not smelling. And you don't even have to have animals. You could just end up doing plant-based, or you can end up doing aquaculture. That's another valuable mechanism to raise food within an urban environment. Small footprint. There's an organization called Growing Power in Milwaukee, Chicago, and they've expanded to a few other places. And they've got a wonderful model on a small, it's like 2.5 acre plot, where they raise an enormous amount of food between greenhouses and open spots. They've got small animals. Of course, you don't have the cattle. I don't think they've got any hogs. They never have, but They do have goats and a few sheep and some chickens and rabbits and then a lot of fish, as well as a lot of plant-based products. And they process it right there within their facility on that small property, and then they sell it through their local farmers markets in town. And we can mimic that type of model in every city that we've got around. West Virginia has the same problem you spoke of. Our local community here near me is Huntington. I've seen it in Charleston. I've seen it in small towns like Princeton, for instance, has those same issues, and all over the state. And we can use that same model. It's just taking what's easy, but you start with changing the people in government's mind. Government's our biggest hindrance right there. I've said it all along. Onerous regulations. We got to get people in government to support the people and change their mindset on how they're governing. Did that answer your question on that?
Yes, it did. Now,
Thank
Roy, if you're elected, let's say, what is the one thing that you want to make sure that you accomplish during your term?
Boy, one thing.
One thing.
I guess a big thing that set me on this mission several years ago was raw milk. And, as a consumer, I wanted to get it. And there's a lot of farmers who want to be able to sell that product, and it seems small. But when you open that up as the one thing, then that leads to other things that now we can get into giving our farmers permission to produce. So it seems like a small thing for a few people, but it's a door opener. It's a beachhead. And when we accomplish that, we'll accomplish other things. And, West Virginia as a whole is a beachhead in this country. We're a small state of, less than 2 million people. And this movement is around the whole country right now. And nobody can really make a start of it because of their governments. And so when we overcome these hurdles in West Virginia, something small like raw milk, and then we're able to change some other things, and other states then say, well, we can do this too. West Virginia's doing it, and they're number 50 out of 50. So if they can have liberty and make these progresses, so can we. And then pretty soon you end up with a few other small states that are doing the same thing, or their version of liberty. And then pretty soon you've got 10, and then 20, and the whole country says, hey, I want my piece of liberty. And then we change the whole system in a revolutionary manner from one little thing like overcoming the raw milk prohibition.
So we talked about a lot of different topics, but in your opinion, what are the 3 biggest issues facing farmers that we haven't touched on yet? And how do you propose to address them?
I've touched on them a little bit already, but really the number one thing is the onerous regulations. That is a huge offset between large farmers and small farmers, and we've got to fix that in order to balance the scales. And I've addressed that, so I won't go into much more about that. That's the number one thing. And then we have to facilitate the facilities around the state between processors and markets to give our farmers an outlet and our consumers a place to go. Along with that, it's a marketing campaign to teach our consumers, here's what is important for good quality food, and here's what you should be looking out for, and here's what these labels mean. But I've talked a lot about what we'll do in West Virginia, but along with that, when I talk about onerous regulations, it's not just in our state. We have that burden at the national level as well. And so I will be sending a team, and just like lobbyists, big money lobbyists paying our congressmen off to pass bills in favor of those lobbies, we're going to be right there too. And I've already been establishing relationships with people like Congressman Thomas Massey, who is a champion for regenerative farming, small farms. And we're going to get some of that stuff passed at the national level as well. So things like the country of origin labels need to come back. the Prime Act. That's hot in the news right now, and I'm a big advocate of it. And the raw milk prohibition, where it prohibits federal agencies from interfering in raw milk at the state level. And then education. I can't harp enough on education. That's a big one. It just doesn't have to be in college. We can do that on a smaller scale for more people, and it doesn't cost us near as much money. Those are the things that are going to help us expand.
Well, with that, we've come to the end of the harder questions. The next set of questions are questions we've designed so that we can get to know you, the person. We know that farming is difficult, sometimes backbreaking and even heartbreaking work. It requires long hours without any certainty of knowing whether you will show a profit at the end of the year. The weather can ruin your crop or result in a bumper crop that then lowers the prices for everyone. It's like playing dice with Mother Nature. And given that, what made you decide to come back to farming?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I'm proud that, I didn't just stumble into it. I made a conscientious decision. And what I saw across our food spectrum was the lack of available quality food in our grocery stores. I didn't like the taste of it. I didn't like that we were putting so much chemicals in it. I didn't like that a lot of it was coming from China or, pick your other country. And I thought I could do better. And I started looking into it and said, yeah, I can do this. It's not easy, but it's not as hard as it's made out to be. It's easy to make the decision what to do for the right thing. And so I wanted to do the right thing and produce food for my family. And through that, I said, you know what? I need to scale this up so that if I'm already investing in all the things that it's necessary to produce food for my family, I can scale it up and produce more food for my community and pay for my operation that I'm investing in to produce for my family. And it just scaled up from there. And it's awesome feeling when a mother comes to you and says, I need quality food for my child. They've got this disease or this disorder or something, and they're having trouble with the industrial food they get from the grocery store, and they tell you, I need your food to make my kid healthy or to sustain them. And so that has kept me going along this way. And it's also humbling to have other people that want to do the same thing and ask you, how can I do this? I don't have money. I don't have land. I don't have the knowledge, whatever. Share with me how to do this. And you share that, and then they're thankful for it. So those are the things that got me back into it and keeps me going and has actually pushed me into this mission to expand that on a bigger level.
So what is your single most favorite thing or place in the state of West Virginia? And don't say the people, because they're not a thing or a place.
Right. So I really enjoy trout fishing. I didn't get to do it as a kid. I learned sitting on the bank and watching a bobber, which was boring to me. I love to hunt. But when I learned about trout fishing and the streams that we have here in West Virginia that are abundant in some places with wonderful trout, there's several streams up in the middle of the state that I really enjoy going to. There's a lot of solitude, but there's a group of men that get together every year and do a men's retreat through a local church here in our community. And a good friend of mine invited me to that a few years ago. It's been more than almost 20 years ago now. And I keep going back. It's a great group of men. And we have a wonderful week together, catching fish and talking about the Bible and how to serve God better. And I really enjoy it. Probably one of the favorite things. And I love being at my farm. That's a fantastic place too. If through all this crisis here that we've been kind of locked down to the farm almost, it's enjoyable in a lot of regards. But so that's probably my true favorite place, but I really enjoy the trout fishing, and I can't trout fish here on my farm, so I guess I got to go up to the mountains for that.
That's definitely one of the benefits of living in West Virginia during the coronavirus pandemic is we have lots of space to socially distance ourselves.
Yes, we do.
So what would you say are your personal core values?
So the values that Dad taught me growing up was honor and integrity. And I didn't even know those were names of values. It was just how he taught me to be. And ironically, I had been in the Army for a few years, and we formalized what we call the Army values. And there's 7 of them, but honor and integrity are the 2 bigger values in that. And it's like, well, these aren't Army values. These are just core values like Dad taught me growing up. So, you can't buy integrity for anything, but you can give it away for nothing. And once you give it away, you can't get it back. So it's very important. And I'm teaching my daughter those same values, and other folks that I get to work with. I've worked with a lot of young folks in the Army, and we make sure, we can't give them those values, but we can teach them this is how you ought to be, and you got to decide for yourself if you're going to adhere to these values. And so no matter what other values we have, and there's other values that are good, in my opinion, you've got to have honor and integrity as the foundation of all the other core values.
So, Roy, as a person, not as a candidate, but a person, what are you passionate about?
I've read a lot about Thomas Jefferson, and I would probably classify myself as a Jeffersonian in the regard of I've got a curious mind. I love to learn, and I love to design and implement new things. And so not as a candidate, but just as a farmer and as an engineer-minded person, I've actually designed some things on our farm that make my job easier. And I'm very proud, not in the thing that it is, but that I came up with something that, as far as I know, nobody else ever came up with, or at least not the way that we did it. And so I really love, learning the environment around me, and how can I incorporate the things that I need to do into working with environment, and then building something new that works within it.
So we've touched on this a little. Aside from farming, trout fishing, or hunting, what do you like to do in your off time?
I love to spend time with my family. And I know that might be an old cliche, but I was pretty much an old man before I had my child. And so I get to be old enough to be a grandpa and got a kid. And so she's a pure joy to me. And I get to take her on, her and my wife both, on military trips that I do periodically. I'm blessed to get to go a lot of places for the military, and I'm able to take them with me. And there's a lot of other things that we enjoy doing, going to museums, seeing sites around the country. And, we're a homeschool family, so I don't have to ask the King's permission to take my kid out of school. We just take her when it suits us. And so getting around to see things around the country and learn, it all fits into the whole web. It's not a single thing. It's our web of life and how we live our life. And that just all works together. So the learning and spending time together and, being a part of our community all fits together in that web. And I can't imagine doing anything better than spending time with my family.
So, last question. What is most unique about you as a person?
I asked my wife that a little bit ago, and she said I probably shouldn't answer with her answer. But I think it's just, and I've kind of touched on it already. Really, it's that curiosity about life and wanting to always learn more. No matter what I've learned, I'm very passionate about learning something and learn every aspect about it. And then once I've learned about it, I'm done with that, and let's move on to learning something new. And, you know, how can I use that to improve my life or somebody's life around me? And that's probably a very unique thing about me.
Well, with that, we've come to the end. We'd like to give you a few minutes to tell us and the voters anything you think we've missed that you want to highlight, including how to get more information on your campaign, how to get involved, get in touch with you, donate, etc.
Excellent. Yeah. So I've got 3 things that I really need from folks. I need people to go vote in the primary. I'm running against an incumbent. That's my toughest race. And he's a professional politician and he's got a lot of money. So I don't have either of those. And I don't want to be a professional politician, by the way. But I need people to go out in the primary if they want to see me even have a shot. I need donations. And so I've got a PayPal link on my website. I'll tell you in just a minute, or they can mail to me. And that website is the website is rameyforwv.com. That's RAMEYFORWV.com. And you'll find a link on there for PayPal. And if you don't use PayPal, then you can mail me a donation, Ramey for WV. And I need you to share this with others. Again, I'm not a big money candidate and can't get the fancy billboards and the TV ads. But as a grassroots campaign, I'm depending on everybody out there who thinks anything at all about this message to share it with your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, and that's how we'll end up winning this. Contact information for me is my email is rameyforwv@gmail.com, and I have a Facebook page that's Roy Ramey for WV, and also a Facebook group, Friends of Roy Ramey for WV. And again, my website is rameyforwv.com. And if you go to my Facebook group, I have a lot of material there that I've been building for quite a while. And you'll learn a lot about me. If there's any questions you got, feel free to email me with questions, or I want to hear your feedback too. If I haven't covered something, or even if you think something different than me, let me know that. And that helps me understand what other people want and think and know. So I appreciate that. And I think that covers my message. Thank you all. And I do, I want to say thank you all to you two as well. You mentioned that we can't get out and campaign. I had a huge rally planned with Joel Salatin coming here to West Virginia, and a lot of people were excited to meet him. And due to these restrictions, I was not able to do the physical rally. We switched up to do a virtual rally, and he was gracious enough to accommodate for that. And we got a decent amount of participation on that. That's still available, by the way, on my Facebook group. But because of what you guys are doing, that really helps get our message out there to other people. And I very much appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your service as well.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
And
Thank you.
thank you for talking to us this afternoon and helping us get the word out to voters so they can make a better informed choice. Thank you for everyone that watches the video, and everyone remember, wash those hands.